Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody, and welcome to In the Feed Zone. We are about 46 seconds till we roll out of the gate here, and we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and send a couple messages to our riders in game, and for those listening in, this is actually a live game as it is recorded. We've got 17 riders in the pen. We're going to be rolling at a nice easy pace at 1.8 watts per kilogram as we go over our topic today here in the feed zone. Just about 20 seconds, we'll group everybody up and then we'll head on out. But again, thank you for joining us. This is In the Feed Zone. It comes on at 5:45 Pacific, 8:45 Eastern, and 12:45 GMT. We are just about ready to go. 3, 2, and 1. Here we go, everybody, on the beacon. Perfect. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, we'll pull up our first slide. Let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Jason Flores. I go by JFlow here on Zwift. If you're online, look me up, send me a ride on. I'll find you on the other side and give you a ride on as well. A quick medical disclaimer that the only purpose of this live stream is to educate, to inform, and it's not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional, and it's provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice or services. And then a quick overview of the goals of the live stream today is to present articles in the media covering food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports. So today's article is actually brought to us by Precision Hydration, a really great place, a great resource to kind of get information about hydration on and off the bike, and really great articles as a whole that just give all around good advice on hydration. So if you're having any issues, they have a free sweat test that you can check out on their website, and you can find out more about what they do and what they could provide and the services they provide as well. So the article that we'll be talking about today is actually called How to Minimize Alcohol's Effects on Your Waistline. So really, really interesting topic. We've had a couple conversations in the endurance lab as well as in the community just to talk a little bit about how this can affect your riding, your endurance goals, and that sort of thing. So I thought it would be a pertinent conversation that we could have here on In the Feed Zone. It just allows us to have an open conversation to kind of get a couple answers, just to see what the actual literature says, or just to come with an open mind on how we can approach this sort of thing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or that you should, but maybe just a thought on how we could go about it. All right. So I guess the first thing to talk about, we'll do a short little overview here, is how to minimize, as we talk about how to minimize alcohol's effect on your waistline. So essentially, this is not an endorsement to binge drink or to drink all night. Obviously, to be social, and if in fact this is part of your social activity, it is essentially inevitable. So it's about, for the more serious athletes, obviously it is something to consider, it is something to think of. So I think it is important that we take just a time to kind of see what we can learn about it. So you could definitely enjoy a few drinks, and the question is how can we minimize our impact on our waistlines or just with our endurance goals? So let's kind of take a quick overview. We're going to talk about how it alters your metabolism, how it affects your appetite and your food choices, and how it can also cause hangovers, which I'm sure that if you do drink and if you do consume, you have felt this effect at some way, shape, or form. So essentially, it alters your metabolism in a way that your digestive system, it actually prioritizes alcohol as a fuel source when you do have it in the system, because it cannot store alcohol. So what it does is directly as you do take it, it's looking for that to burn it off, to get rid of it. Essentially, it's toxic to the body. It's trying to get rid of it very quickly. Secondly, the preferential treatment slams the brake on any protein, carb, any fat metabolism that's going on. This means nutrients, especially fats, kind of lower on the totem pole. If we kind of look at that, it's alcohol, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. The lower end of that is likely to be stored as fuel. And we'll talk about how we can kind of prioritize different things to be able to reach our goals. So in the end, they're most likely to be stored. It also affects your appetite and your food choices. The one of the better known side effects of alcohol absorption is the loss of inhibition. Essentially not knowing or just not being able to hold yourself back from doing things. We've all heard the stories. Combination of that essentially and the potential for alcohol to increase your appetite and the likely proximity to things like high calorie meals or really hyper palatable foods are essentially a recipe for disaster, even for the health conscious drinker. So someone who's even really thinking about kind of their choices. It's not just a decision just to indulge on this social occasion in the first place, but it's also affected by the amount of food that we end up eating during that time, before, after, and during that time. So remember, the preferential metabolism of alcohol in your system means that the calories from a late night feeds are most likely to be stored as fat for the next day. So, and the third part of this is that it also can cause hangovers. So a large alcohol intake can impair sleep quality. It's associated with reduced sleep hours. It's also a reduction in your lower body power output the next morning. So really thinking about trying to, get a decent ride in, you really need to think about if you want to be doing that before or just moving that session to another time. So it could also, like I was saying, it can leave you pretty rough the next day. So activity levels, you need to kind of gauge and figure out when you want to kind of expend those energies. So combine this with a tendency to combat hangovers with essentially more food. The myths of eating a bunch of carbohydrates can essentially flatten the effects of that night or trying to reach those goals the next day. So I guess we could talk about how do we minimize them then? What do we do? What can we do? What can we think about the days before or the times leading up to that can help minimize the effects of drinking and the weight gain that is associated with that? And so here's a couple tactics. We're going to go over how you could minimize your fat intake on the day of. You could fill up on meals that are made up of lean protein and veggies. You could leave for a prepared snack when you get home or some food, or you can just go straight to bed. You could pick your poison, meaning making a couple smart choices in what you drink. Like I said, we're not here to say to not drink, but we can give you a couple tactics to make this a good evening, a good time, and that you're able to get back on track. Also talk about avoiding high sugar mixers, and also about how we can integrate exercise in the whole equation. Okay, so the first part here, minimizing fat intake. So of the three macronutrients of protein, carbs, and fats, the fats are most likely to be stored as new fat tissue when you drink alcohol. So reducing your fat intake on the night can lessen the fat storing propensity. Essentially, your body's wanting to store that fat. So getting a huge, it's very popular, like bulletproof coffee with coffee and butter and all this sort of thing, could be leave those for other days that you may be fasting or doing or having other goals versus just trying to get calories in. So the other idea would be to fill up on meals made up of lean protein and veggies. So what that can be is essentially low in fat, and so high protein and vegetables will be inherently low in calories, essentially leaving you a gap for the evening that you'll be having to put calories in for the rest of the day. And also you'll be less likely to graze on foods while you're drinking. This means that you've got some headroom to kind of work with as the day goes on. So your calorie intake prior will be essentially low, giving you some space and some headroom moving forward. So leaving a prepared snack, this is actually a pretty good tactic, or just having a plan. I think just like any of our conversations, we find that planning our workouts, planning our rest, planning our recovery, planning when our races are going to be, we can essentially plan our evening. So if you're the type of person who finds it hard to turn down food, or turn down that, one more thing, let's go grab something to eat, having something at home could be really beneficial, knowing that you have something there, or just committing to, or having the willpower to just head straight to bed and get some hydration in. And we've talked about some tactics of making sure you've got a good mix of, electrolytes, and water is real easy, because essentially alcohol, we've talked about in the past, actually dehydrates you quite a bit. So fueling or hydrating as if you're on the bike post consumption of alcohol could actually work really well. So getting into this routine of either heading straight for bed or having something the night on the way to bed could actually help, because even though alcohol worsens sleep, it does help you fall asleep quicker. So if you can get to the bed at the time, you could actually fall asleep pretty quickly. With the hunger gone, or you have satisfied the hunger with something that you've got, then you've got a few calories less in you from the whole night of consuming. Essentially, moving on to picking your poison wisely. So no form of alcohol essentially is healthy. As I talked about earlier, about 5% of the calories from alcohol actually end up being stored as fat. So it's mostly, it's urgently burned off. So it's very, very quickly burned off, just in the fact that your body is feeling or thinking that it is a toxicity or something toxic in the body. With this in mind, drinking drinks like spirits and dry wines that contain mostly alcohol versus anything else. So these are straight drinks versus things like beers, ciders, sweet wines, and cocktails could be better. So we're talking like straight vodka, straight gin, straight whiskey, and some dry wines can definitely be on the good, better, best side. It would be on the better decision versus some of the other the other choices that we'll have. Just as a quick average here, an average lager contains anywhere from 10 to 15 grams of carbohydrates. Ciders can definitely have up to 4 times of that, since they are made with typically fermented fruit. So it's a higher amount there. So the sky's the limit when it comes to even cocktails, when you come up with mixed drinks with all kinds of other things mixed into the equation. So it really depends on how you tolerate, but staying with more straightforward spirits and dry wines can definitely make a difference. So essentially straight drinks, like I talked about, the vodka, the whiskey, wine, and dry wines can be helpful. So the strength of the drinks can sometimes mean that the hard-hitting stuff, quote unquote, may be healthier. And I think on a social setting, a lot of times you'll find that a lot of people won't bother you if you're drinking something straight up versus something mixed. So you may find that a little easier, a little less consumption at the end of it all. But you'll know what works best for you. So stick with that. The next point being avoid high sugar mixers, and you see this all the time. If you're out, these are the colored drinks, the blues, the reds, the purples, the pinks, the crazy flavors, and just hyper palatable thing. Essentially drinking soft drinks, drinking Red Bulls, energy drinks, fruit juices, all these things mixed in with other alcohols can be a huge spike both in calories and in its effect, and can lead to a really bad day after. So really need to be careful of that. So over the course of the night, there's a huge amount of extra calories that can be consumed. Really you can do without, especially being a health conscious rider, a rider here on Zwift and that sort of thing. So a good alternative to still have some of the mouthfeel and that sort of thing is you can go with a soda water, lime, lemon, different drinks like that. More and more you'll find drinks being made with real ingredients to get those flavors versus mixes and sugars and all that sort of thing. So looking at that can be really a better alternative. So if you have to go with a soft drink, you're going to want to opt for possibly soda water or something with 0 calories. Better decision than going with full. I'm not a fan of all the extra stuff that's in it. Really just stay away from soft drinks can be the best decision in this case. The next point being do some exercise. This could also include doing exercise while you're consuming. So if you notice, like moving around, dancing, or just being active, standing, talking, conversating, can make a difference versus just sitting and consuming. So your body, remember, only tends to store fat effectively when you're in a calorie surplus. So you will be in a surplus as you go on through the night. So increasing your expenditure or your consumption, meaning use of the calories, can actually balance things out. So at least you're doing something, moving around, standing up. So it's important that this large intake can also repair, as well as your next day's exercise. So having a big day workout after this sort of binge or social interaction or social day could definitely prove to be, as far as major performance gains, it's not going to be a big day the next day. So just as you would normally properly rehydrate after an exercise session, you'll also find that alcohol, since it does cause dehydration, like I mentioned, it's not a good idea to start your night dehydrated. So starting your night hyperhydrated, like you would the day before, let's say, a race, we've talked about that before, getting a good amount of mix between water and maybe like 1,500 grams of a salt solution to help bring in that hydration, can make a big difference in how you feel through the night and through the next morning. So having those can be very, very useful. So our last slide here, just planning for the day after. So talking about, we've got through the whole night, we're hydrating before, we're hydrating during, we're making good choices as far as what we are drinking. We're keeping it real simple. We're keeping it essentially with the hard liquor, no mixers, no sugars. And then hydrating at the end of the night, planning for food or whatever our plans are going to be as we head home for that night, and just trying to get some sleep, because although you will sleep quickly, you may not have the most restful sleep. So as we move forward, we talk about planning for the day after. And as mentioned before, bad habits after a night can be a major contributor to fat gain. So these may not be particularly appealing to the morning after, meaning what to do, but it'll thank you in the long run. So we essentially want to plan our nutrition, starting out with something healthy, getting some food in as far as breakfast is concerned. This could also prevent excessive calorie intake from stopping you from looking for emergency food or quick food as the day goes on. Drinking plenty of water and getting an early night the day after, just to get more rest. You'll be able to sleep kind of more normally after that time, or the next day turns around. So essentially the remedy for poor sleep and dehydration from the night before is that you get back to your normal routine and that sort of thing. There's recommendations can go as far as getting on for an active recovery ride, going for a walk, but it's more just getting your body to move a little bit, and that sort of thing can be definitely be more beneficial to you, rather than just heading to the couch and just vegging out, or just headed back and just being on the sofa all day. So it's not just alcohol's impact on your waistline that might consider, but also just being able to let yourself go and just have those social interactions, whether it be after a big ride or whether it be when family's in town. You'll just want to consider, and again, just like any of our conversations here on In the Feed Zone, it's just to make informed decisions on what you could do and how you can make those decisions for the better. And so on that front, a little bit of science, that alcohol consumption actually reduced muscle protein synthesis. So with concurrent bouts of exercise, meaning that the protein synthesis that was ingested with the alcohol, that they concluded that the alcohol ingestion suppressed the anabolic response, meaning that your ability to repair or recover or any adaptation to training would actually be stunted. So no big surprises here, but it does suggest that if you're looking to make big strides in your endurance and your racing and training, like we are here, I think it's really important to think about keeping these nights out essentially to a minimum. And so I guess these, binge drinking nights can involve, 1 to 2 grams of alcohol per weight. It's about 3.5 pints of beer, or about 4 glasses of wine for someone who weighs around 75 or 80 kilograms. So you would want to make sure you kind of gauge how much you're putting out there. So the same way we gauge and measure our carbohydrates and our protein intake, think about 1 gram per alcohol, about 3 or 4 drinks. That's about the limit where you won't even be able to drive. So kind of keep that in mind too. So the effects of the odd bottle or beer of wine or glass with dinner are a little less clear cut, but definitely something to look at. So bottom line before we go here is, have fun, be sensible, make smart choices. I know not everybody here does make the choice to consume, but if you do, you've got our tips here, our arsenal. Come back, listen to this, get an idea of what other riders are doing, and how they can prepare for that. And essentially, you're hydrating and you're fueling, and you're trying to understand what you can do through the night to help minimize the effects, to maximize the next day's recovery. So it sounds very similar to planning a workout or that sort of thing. So definitely keep that in mind. We've got about 10 minutes here in the stream left, and our ride. We've got a couple riders here in Discord. I'm gonna jump over to Swift Live and see if there's any comments here. We've got Quan Nguyen and his comments on it's Friday, and his complaints that why is in the feed zones topic today on his favorite day, Friday, to consume, and he's saying to save it for Sundays when it's don't save it for Sundays when it's too late. And he felt that if getting some work in instead of dancing, Quan likes to do push-ups. So push-up contests are always a good way to get some exercise out, to get that burn, or to get those calories burned while you're drinking. We've got True Rotations. Thanks for joining in. Beer bad. Gin and tonic, slimline tonic is good. Yes, definitely. Straight drinks, gin and tonic, soda, soda waters, all good choices. Quan's question is if cane sugar is any better. I'd say it's on the good, better, best scale. It is definitely better as far as a choice versus high fructose corn syrup. We've had that conversation before, but no sugar would be better, Quan. So straight drinks. Pete put a big smile up to giving up the drink. If you haven't had a chance to listen in on his story, he's got a very interesting story, very, very inspiring. So definitely check that out. Last time we've heard that was on a Zwiftcast episode. So definitely check that out. Very, very inspiring guy. Check out Zwift Fitness, his group there. Frank Soltis goes, why would you drink alcohol if you live in California? This is true. We definitely, here down in Southern California, have a little bit of I guess a saying, not a saying would say, but that there's not a lot of drinkers. But I think there's still people that like to enjoy the craft beers, the artisanal things, the fancy things here. And Quan's mentioning, so just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday he's thinking, so those are the days off. And if we know anything about Quan, those are all maintenance days during the week from Monday through Friday, so Monday through Thursday there. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are his days off, and typically any other day that ends in Y he's able to consume. So so Martin Walker's jumping on. Hold on. The bar is actually open here, being 8 hours ahead. Yeah, it's probably open already, and I'm glad Mr. Rob Elwood isn't here today. He actually owns a pub out there in Europe. So Pat Neal says, thanks, Dad. 10 minutes for questions. Here we go. I have Hammer Fizz or Scratch in the morning. Yes, Frank, I think that's a great idea. Any of those things can work. Even an electrolyte drink can be very helpful. So great ideas there as far as hydrating yourself during, or actually after, or even before. I found that very useful also. Let's see what else we've got. What drink should I drink tomorrow for the FTP ride? I think if Quan did an FTP test, we would recommend a shot for every step in the step test, and we could stream that live. I think that'd be pretty interesting. So Quan, you've got your mission. We'll live stream your step tests. We'll go every step, one shot per step. So that's one shot every 2 minutes and 30 seconds until you either fall off the bike, get to your FTP, or throw up. So one of the three things. But anyways, this is a really great, lively conversation here today. I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the Feed Zone. Definitely check out the original article here at Precision Hydration under their blog. They've got really great information. It comes out just about weekly. Subscribe to their newsletter. Check out their website. Try the free sweat test. See what it comes up for you, and it can get an idea of what you need to hydrate yourself, whether it be for what we talked about today or for our endurance and hydration needs on and off the bike. So if there's nothing else today, I want to thank for everyone listening, and we will see everybody next week, same time, same place in the Feed Zone. you.